Hey there, backyard mechanics and Peugeot lovers, Dr. Cool here, and today we're diving deep into the red abyss, that pesky stop warning light flashing on your Peugeot dashboard. This little guy screaming stop means your car's trying to tell you something seriously wrong, and ignoring it is like ignoring your mother-in-law when she's telling you how to load the dishwasher. A recipe for disaster. We're talking about potential engine damage, brake failure, the whole 9 yards. But don't you worry your little heads, because Dr. Cool is here to break down the top, reasons why that stoplight's throwing a fit, and most importantly, how to fix each and every one of them. So buckle up, grab your wrenches, and let's get this show on the road. Alright folks, first up is a common culprit that'll have your stoplight throwing a tantrum low coolant level. Your engine gets hotter than a jalapeno eating contest in July, and coolant is what keeps it from melting down like your ice cream cone at the beach. So if that light pops on, the first thing you do is safely pull over and let that engine cool down. Once it's safe, pop the hood and check that coolant reservoir. If it's looking lower than a snake's belly in a ditch, you got to top it off with the manufacturer recommended coolant. And don't forget to check for leaks. Hoses, radiator, water pump, those are your usual suspects. Now, if that coolant level is fine, but your engine's still hotter than a firecracker on the 4th of July, you might be dealing with an overheating problem. This is serious stuff, people. Ignoring it could turn your engine into a molten mess. So, once again, pull over to a safe spot and let that engine cool down. Once it's safe to touch, open the hood and give everything the once over. Check the radiator for any blockages like leaves or debris. Make sure that cooling fan is spinning like a top. If it ain't, it might be time for a new one. Moving on to another critical issue, folks. Low oil pressure. Oil is like the lifeblood of your engine, keeping everything running smooth and preventing catastrophic wear and tear. If that stoplight flashes and you suspect low oil pressure, pull over immediately. Driving with low oil pressure is like running a marathon with no water. You're headed straight for disaster. First things first, check your oil level using the dipstick. If it's low, top it off, but don't stop there. You got to find out why it's low in the first place. Inspect for leaks around the oil pan, valve covers, and oil filter. Now let's talk about brakes, folks. If your stoplight is flashing and you feel something funky with your brake's spongy pedal, grinding noises, or pulling to one side, stop driving immediately. This is not the time to be a hero. First, check your brake fluid level. If it's low, top it off with the recommended fluid, then take a peek at your brake pads and rotors. If they're worn down to the metal, it's time for a replacement. Alright, let's talk about the electrical system, the heart and soul of your Peugeot. If that stoplight's acting up, it could be a sign of a dying battery or a faulty alternator. Your battery's like the starter's pistol, and the alternator's the one keeping it charged up and ready to go. To check your battery, grab your trusty multimeter and test the voltage. Should be around 12.6 volts with the engine off. If it's lower than a snake's belly, you might need a new battery. As for the alternator, that's a bit trickier to diagnose at home. If you suspect it's the culprit, best to let a mechanic with the right tools handle it. Now, let's talk about something that'll really get your attention: steering system failure. If that stoplight pops on and your steering wheel feels heavier than a sack of potatoes, you've got a problem, my friend. First things first, check your power steering fluid. If it's low, top it off and check for leaks. Hoses, pump, steering rack. Those are the usual suspects. If the fluid level's good and you're still having trouble, it could be a more serious issue with the steering rack or pump itself. Faulty sensors, the eyes and ears of your car. Modern cars like your Peugeot are packed with sensors. They're like the eyes and ears of your car, telling the computer what's going on. Sometimes these sensors can go haywire, triggering that pesky stop light. Diagnosing a faulty sensor can be tricky without the right tools. That's where your trusty OBD2 scanner comes in handy. This little gadget plugs into your car's computer and reads out any error codes. Clogged radiator or cooling fans beat the heat. If your radiator's clogged up or your cooling fans are slacking off, your engine's gonna overheat faster than a politician in a lie detector test. Over time, your radiator can get clogged with dirt, bugs, and all sorts of nasty stuff, blocking the flow of coolant. To check it, let the engine cool down completely, then carefully inspect the radiator fins for any blockages. If it's looking like a fur coat, it's time for a cleaning. As for those cooling fans, they should kick on when the engine reaches a certain temperature. ABS or ESP system failure. Safety first, folks. ABS or anti-lock braking system prevents your wheels from locking up during hard braking, while ESP or electronic stability program helps you maintain control in slippery conditions. If your stoplight's flashing and you suspect a problem with either of these systems, it's crucial to get it checked out ASAP. Head straight to a qualified mechanic to have it diagnosed and repaired. Now here's a sneaky one that often gets overlooked: the radiator heat sensor. This little guy is responsible for telling your car's computer how hot the coolant is, and if it goes bad, it can throw the whole cooling system out of whack, triggering that dreaded stoplight. Testing a radiator heat sensor is a job best left to the pros, as it involves checking its resistance at different temperatures. If it's not reading correctly, it's time for a replacement. All right, let's talk about the fuel pump, the heart of your fuel system. This hard-working component is responsible for drawing fuel from the tank and delivering it to the engine. If your fuel pump's on strike, your engine ain't going nowhere, and that stop light will be flashing brighter than a disco ball. Diagnosing a faulty fuel pump can be tricky, but one telltale sign is a whining noise coming from the fuel tank. Now let's talk about the transmission, the unsung hero of your Peugeot's drivetrain. If your transmission's acting up, it can trigger that dreaded stoplight and put a serious damper on your driving experience. Common signs of transmission trouble include slipping gears, rough shifting, and strange noises like whining or clunking. Let's not forget about the exhaust system. It might not be glamorous, but it's crucial for keeping your Peugeot running smoothly and legally. A clogged catalytic converter is a common culprit for exhaust system blockages. Now we're getting into the really technical stuff, the engine control unit, or ECU for short. This little computer is the brains of your Peugeot, controlling everything from fuel injection to ignition timing to emissions. If your ECU goes on the fritz, it can cause all sorts of havoc, including triggering that dreaded stoplight. Diagnosing and repairing a faulty ECU is not a DIY job, folks. If you suspect your ECU is acting up, your best bet is to head straight to a qualified mechanic or dealership. And last but not least, let's talk about the thermostat, a small but mighty component that plays a big role in regulating your engine's temperature. Your thermostat's like a valve that controls the flow of coolant through the engine. When the engine's cold, the thermostat stays closed, allowing the engine to warm up quickly. Once the engine reaches operating temperature, the thermostat opens, allowing coolant to circulate and prevent overheating. If your thermostat gets stuck closed, the engine can overheat, triggering that dreaded stoplight. So there you have it, folks. The top reasons why that stop warning light might be flashing on your Peugeot dashboard. Remember, that stop warning light is serious business. It's your car's way of telling you something's wrong, and ignoring it can lead to costly repairs or even dangerous situations. While some of these issues can be handled by US backyard mechanics, others require the expertise of a qualified mechanic. So don't be afraid to seek professional help when needed.